Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Neeru Tandon, Department of English, VSSD College, Kanpur. In this paper named Linguistics, this is the module number 11 titled Basic Concepts in Morphology, written by Shri Rupa Poddar, an independent scholar, University of Hyderabad. Morphology. What are the basic concepts in morphology and why it is important to understand morphology? If you want to understand linguistics, then morphology is the basic area where you are supposed to have clear concepts. Morphology is the branch of linguistics that deals with words and internal structure and how they are formed. We become so curious to understand it. Okay, we know the word, but how it was created first and what is the structure of the word? Okay, let's study this in the branch of morphology. The German poet, novelist, playwright and philosopher Johann Wolfgang Goethe coined the term morphology in the 19th century in a biological context. This word is of Greek origin. The term morph means shape or form and morphology means the study of forms. Now, when we say morphology, the first word with which it has been coined is morpheme. What is morpheme? Morphemes are the smallest indivisible unit of meaningful content and grammatical function. A morpheme is not identical to a word, it is different. Morpheme may or may not stand alone, whereas a word can stand alone. Morpheme can be defined as a word or part of a word that has a semantic content and that contains no smaller part with a semantic content. For example, the word unforgivable has three morphemes. Un is a prefix meaning not, plus forgive is the root morpheme, and able is an adjective forming suffix. So with these three it becomes unforgivable. Every word will comprise of one or more morphemes. For example, the word dog has one morpheme, and when we add a plural marker s to the word dog, it becomes dogs with two morphemes where the suffix s plays a grammatical function. You can see on your screen the classification of morphemes. There is morpheme, then we have free morpheme, we have bound morpheme, we have zero morpheme, then we have affixes, we have cliches, we have empty, prefix, infix, a suffix. So all these things, they come in a particular order. How we just go through it is better understood by this classification. Now let us discuss them one by one. Free morpheme. Free morpheme are the words that can stand alone and work independently, like for example cat, dog, car, tree. Then bound morpheme, they are those which cannot stand alone and work independently, and it occurs only in combination with other morphemes or root morphemes. For example, un, s, ing, shun, ly. Classification of bound morpheme with affixes, prefix and suffix. Affixes are always bound morphemes that are attached to a word. Affixes in a word are assigned for the grammatical function. Affixes are added to a word or root of a word to change the meaning. Affixes can be further classified into various types based on the position they occur in a word. We have prefix and suffix. Prefix, we know that letter or group of letters that is always placed at the beginning of a word. When we say illogical, unnecessary, this un and ill, they are prefixes. In the same way, suffixes follows the base. They are placed at the end of the word, like cleanliness. This ness is the suffix. Regularly, this ly is the suffix. Playing, ing is the suffix. Then we have circumfix. They occur on both sides of the base. One part appears before the base and the other part appears after the base. For example, unmindful. In the root word, we can say both the prefix ke and suffix an can be added to form the word fairness. Infix. It is placed within the base itself. For example, dumater, which means wiser, is an example from the Tagalog language. Further classification of affixes are derivational morphemes and inflectional morphemes. Derivational morpheme are those which change the part of a speech or meaning when combined with a root. Generally, the affixes used with the root word are bound morphemes. For example, verb to noun sing becomes singer. Noun to adjective length is long. Adjective to adverb happy, happily. Adjective to verb creative, create. Inflectional morpheme are those morphemes that do not change part of a speech or meaning. It indicates the syntactic or semantic relation between different words in a sentence. For example, wait to waited, dog to dogs, play to playing. So, we have different other morphemes, and in it which contains more than one meaning but cannot be further broken into separate morpheme, like she. So that is the third person plus singular plus feminine plus subject. So but this is a different category. Then we have empty morphemes. They are those morphemes that has structure or form but has no semantic content. For example, cran in the word cranberry. Berry has meaning of its own, but cran doesn't have any semantic content, so this is known as empty morpheme. We have zero morpheme. Zero morphemes are those morphemes that are physically not present in the word yet fulfill the grammatical requirement of the language. In the zero morphemes, the null morpheme is added to the root, therefore it has a function but no form. For example, the verb put has same form in both past and present. Put, put, put. Similarly, the word cut has the same form in both past and present, and in the word sheep, the plural form is also sheep. So they are known as zero morpheme. The word sheep gets attached to a null plural morpheme which changes the meaning but doesn't change the form. Clitics. They are morphemes that has phonological dependency on a neighboring word but whose syntax is word-like. They are syntactically independent but phonologically dependent and always bound on some other form. Clitics often have grammatical rather than lexical meaning. They belong to closed classes like pronouns, prepositions, determiners, and conjunctions. They are usually appear at the edge of a word outside derivational and inflectional affixes. For example, the contraction of the morpheme is as in what's happening, or the contracted forms of the auxiliary verbs in I am and we have are clitics. Clitics can be of two types, proclitics and enclitics. Proclitics occur at the beginning of the morpheme, that is before the host, and enclitics occur at the end of a morpheme, that is after its host. A word is the minimal free unit. Word may consist of a single morpheme as in red, white, boy, run, or more than one as in redness, boys, running, quickly. Word can be used in different senses, as a physical unit and as a semantic entity. The physical entities, the written or spoken forms of a word, are called word forms. In other words, word forms are the physical realization of lexemes. For example, talk, talked, talking are different word forms of the word talk. Words can be combined together to form phrases, clauses, and sentences. Spoken words are made up of units of sound called phonemes and written words of the symbols are called graphemes. Now let us discuss lexeme. It is a term used to refer to the idea that inflected forms, which are also words themselves, are still variants of a single word. It is the basic unit of meaning. The head words or the vocabulary that are given in a dictionary are the lexemes. It includes all the inflected forms of a word. For example, play, plays, playing, player, play. They all come from the root word. Now morph. A morph is a physical form representation of some morpheme in a language. It is the recurrent distinctive sound, phoneme, or sequence of sounds, phonemes. For example, the word infamous is made up of three morphs, infamous, which represents one single morpheme, infamous. There is a particular example of this word no. There is no distinction between the morpheme and the morph, as there is only one meaning associated with the pronunciation no, no, no. Then allomorph. They are the group of morphs that are the realization of the same morpheme. Just as an allophone is a variation of a single phoneme, an allomorph is a variety of a single morpheme. For example, the English noun plural morpheme has the following allomorphs: Z as in dogs, S as in cats, S as in buses. Suppletion. In suppletion, the allomorphs of a morpheme are phonologically unrelated. For example, go, went, is, was, bad, worse, worst, one, first, good, better. So they are all interconnected, but they are different. Now, what is the root? A root is the basic lexical unit of a word which contains the most significant aspects of semantic content. A root cannot be further reduced into smaller parts. Roots are the lexical morphemes and the base to which grammatical derivational morphemes are added to form a complex word. A root is that part of a word that is remaining after all the affixes are removed. It is the basic part that is remaining in a lexeme. For example, in the word untouchables, the root is touch. Touch is the root word, and we are saying untouchable. The suffix able, the prefix un, and another suffix s are added to the root. Play is the root form of plays, playing, played, player. Some lexemes have more than one root. A root can also be a stem. As it is said, all roots can be base, but not all bases are roots. A stem is a part of a word that occurs before any inflectional affix. It is related to only inflection. For example, touch is the stem in the word touched. Bases can be called stems in inflectional morphology. Then what is base? Base is any form of a word to which affixes of any kind can be added. It yields a more complex form of a word. The affixes attached to a base can be inflectional affixes selected for syntactic reasons or derivational affixes which alter the meaning or the grammatical category of the base. For example, a root like girl can be a base since it can be attached to various other affixes like S as in girls, ish as in girlish. Now, Nida's principles for the identification of morphemes are must to discuss and must to understand. What is Nida's principle? It is forms which have a common semantic distinctiveness and an identical phonemic form in all their occurrences constitute a single morpheme. For example, er in singer, player, writer, teacher. Second form of Nida's principle is the form which have common semantic distinctiveness but which differ in phonetic form, and it may constitute a morpheme provided the distribution of formal differences is phonologically defined. For example, z as in dogs, s as in cats, and is as in buses respectively constitute a morpheme, but their occurrences are phonologically conditioned. Now third comes as forms which have a common semantic distinctiveness but which differ in phonetic form in such a way that their distribution cannot be phonologically defined, constitute a single morpheme if the forms are in a complementary distribution. Fourth, Nida's principle, which tells us that an overt formal difference in a structural series constitutes a morpheme. If in any number of such series the overt formal difference and a zero structural difference are the only significant features for distinguishing a minimal unit of phonetic semantic distinctiveness. For example, try to understand it like books and deer are plurals, but one has the plural marker s and the other has a null morpheme. You can see deer has a null morpheme as the plural marker. According to Nida's fourth principle, the plural marker s and the other plural marker constitute the same morpheme. According to the fifth principle, homophonous forms are identifiable as the same or different morphemes based on the following conditions. Homophonous forms with distinctively different meanings constitute different morphemes. For example, pair, pair, and pair constitute different morphemes. One is PAIR, second is PARE, and the third is PEAR. So, homophonous forms with related meanings constitute a single morpheme if the meaning classes are paralleled by distributional differences. Again, I give you an example, that is run. In the expression they run and their run, they are two different words in different contexts. Nida's principle 6 tells us that morpheme is isolable if it occurs under the following conditions. Number 1, in isolation. Number 2, in multiple combinations, in at least one of which the unit with which it is combined occurs in isolation or in other combination. Third, in a single combination, provided the element with which it is combined occur in isolation or in other combinations with non-unique constituents. For example, morphemes like cran, rasp, etc. they come with berry, but which occurs only in single combinations like cranberry, raspberry. Now, there are morphological processes as well. Assimilation, total partial assimilation, progressive regressive assimilation, they are all part of morphological processes. Let us understand what is assimilation. Assimilation is the process in which one sound becomes more similar to another neighboring sound under the influence of that neighboring sound. The changes are classified as total partial assimilation or progressive regressive and contact distant. Partial assimilation occurs when the assimilating sound acquires some of the features and doesn't become identical. Progressive regressive is backward spread of feature in assimilation is termed as regressive assimilation, and forward spread of the feature in assimilation is known as progressive assimilation. Then we have contact distant assimilation, reciprocal assimilation, dissimilation, etc. Gemination, degemination, lengthening, shortening, and then apophony are also there to be discussed. I'll just describe them in brief. Gemination, it refers to the change which produces a sequence of two identical consonants from a single starting consonant. For example, you can say he or she knows becomes he she knows, usha, he she knows. So that is the assimilation. Then degemination, when a sequence of two identical consonants is reduced to a single occurrence. Like immature, the double M in the spelling is pronounced as a single M, immature. Then lengthening is there, like brother-in-law becomes brother-in-law. Then shortening, it refers to the change in which some sounds, usually vowels, are shortened in some content. We know that in lengthening refers to the change in which some sounds, usually vowels, are lengthened. In apophony refers to the alteration of sounds within a word that indicates grammatical information, for example, drink, drank, drunk. In word formation processes, we have compounding and we have endocentric compounds as well. For example, chess table, that is a type of table. Sky blue, a shade of blue, that is endocentric compound. Then we have exocentric compound. In this type of compound, AB is neither A nor B but a C. Somehow that is associated with A and B. Exocentric compounds do not have an overt semantic head. For example, pickpocket. It is not related to pocket in any sense, but it is a thief who steals from others' pocket. Copulative compounds, in this type of compounds, AB is A and B. Both A and B share the same status. They are written with a hyphen. Copulative compounds are also known as coordinative compounds. For example, producer-director. They are two different persons, but for one single reason they are known as one unit, producer-director. Clipping, it is the word formation process which refers to the reduction of a word to one of its pairs. For example, gas, that is from gasoline. Clipping can be of four types: back clipping, fore clipping, middle clipping, and complex clipping. Complex clipping, here one part of the original compound remains intact. For example, cablegram. So what we mean, cable, telegram. So we say cablegram. We have blending, back formation, coining, and acronyms. In blending is a word formation process in which a new word is formed by combining parts of two other words, where the meaning of the new word is a combination of the meaning of two words. For example, smog, derived from smoke and fog, we have smog. Then back formation, like for example, edit, from editor. Coining, like it is the invention of new word. For example, Xerox. All letters, they just stand for something else. Acronyms, these are the words created from the initial letter of several words, like UNO or the radar. Then we have borrowing, derivation, conversion, and incorporation to make some formation of the words. In borrowing is the process in which new words are taken from some other language. Derivation is the process of forming new words from already existing ones by the addition of affixes. In conversion, it is the process of word formation in which a new word is created from an already existing word without any change in the form. And in incorporation, it is the phenomena in which a word, usually a verb or preposition, is compounded with another element, typically a noun, pronoun, or adverb, like babysit. Then we have eponyms, reduplication, and lexical morphology. Eponyms are the words derived from proper names. For example, jumbo. Reduplication is the process of formation of new words either by doubling the entire word or only a part of the word. Full reduplication happens when the exact repetition of a sound or word takes place, whereas partial reduplication involves constant vowel alteration. Then in lexical morphology and phonology model was introduced by Paul Kipasaki and K.P. Mohanan. It involves the treatment of language with a symbiotic relationship between morphological and phonological rules. The central principle of lexical morphology is that the morphological component of the grammar is organized in a series of hierarchical strata. The English affixes are classified into two broad classes on the basis of their phonological behavior. Affixes that do not result in any phonological variation on the base to which they are attached are called neutral affix, for example, less, ness, etc. Auxiliation is the process of development of lexical items into auxiliaries. To summarize, we can say that it is such an interesting process to know how the words are being formed. We must understand how we can make new words by adding prefixes or suffixes, by just assimilation of various words or by deletion. We can just understand, when we understand this process of formation of words, it becomes easy to retain those words in our memory for longer use. Thank you for visiting EPG Pathshala.